Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to, yes, it is, Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti federalists, they were correct in so many different ways. I know a lot of folks out there like to hear they got it right. And this is Tom Novolis, your host, and it is so delightful to be with you today. A sobering day for many of us that it's one of those that is difficult to talk about sometimes, but important to talk about because um, we don't have memories anymore. Memories that we may have uh, sometimes are lingering. So today's program, as you saw in the promo that went out for those that received the promo, and if you don't receive the promo, if you would please go to samueladamsreturns.net for those watching on Rumble. It's over my shoulder. Just a quick mention on that. I guess, for being a little guy, YouTube has taken down some of my videos now. So that's why we're going to and staying with Rumble as a primary means of putting the video up. And then obviously you get the uh, podcast at the different channels that are there. But please sign up and have others subscribe to the newsletter. I only send them out, once a week at most, sometimes in between if there's something that really pops. But just for today's program, all the information about the references and everything for today's program is at samueladamsreturns.net for today's program. And we're talking about that sobering thought of 9/11, and 9/11 being what occurred in 2001. So 9/11 forgotten. It's been forgotten. Uh, Afghanistan forgotten. That's also part of the title. History Unremembered. We're going to talk about that. And then COVID forever. So those are the key elements I'm going to try and draw together. As always, I'm not going to get through everything. So you do need to go look at the references that are available to you. But I want to make sure that you understand that what is forgotten. The tragedy of 9/11 was massive, as many over 30, and it's interesting because that's in a Pew Report that is linked there in the in what I sent out for the promo for the program, the newsletter, that the Pew Report that goes back about 9/11, actually the first one that came out was almost immediately after it. And it's shocking to look at that report and know that when that first came out 20 years ago, 20 years ago was when 9/11 occurred. And most people, those that are, guess what, over 30, over 30 are the ones that remember 9/11. So 20 years ago, those children that were lost parents, um, lost the loved ones. You know, there's an NPR article that I linked to, and I don't like NPR because they are socialist, communist, the woke crowd. But they did a really good article about some of the kids uh, from 9/11, and they have very little to no remembrance of any of their parents. How would they? Especially if they were not even born, they were inside their mother at the time. They were only maybe a year or less old, or up to 10 years old. That puts them at that 30 mark, because at 10 they have some remembrance. Very sad that how little that is of just understanding their family connection. Those that are over 30 in that, significant information. But the things that were troubling and what I want to get into, and we're not going to belabor 9/11 a lot, we're going to talk about it just in this first segment, is that 77% favored U.S. military action at that time. The real tragedy of 9/11 is all of the mental anguish that happened, all of the disparity that occurred, uh, all that is really interesting inside this Pew Report, that when you take and look at it and what the carryover is. I had so much documentation that I wanted to go through and try and talk about, what were the or what are the consequences? What are the unintended consequences of what happened? And uh, it's just as painful to consider that we forgot a lot. And this is because of the whole climate coming out of the universities, education, the wokeness, all of these other things, and the unresponsiveness within the evangelical churches to the real issues in culture and everything else. Um, I always go back to that. And I have a couple links in there. One thing in particular that is driving it when we talk about COVID forever. There's a couple things actually, but the attitudes that came out of 9/11, um, it's just an interesting is that our responsiveness to it was, from my perspective, where do you define that in regards to just war theory, just war theology, and tying it all together? So, what really happened, in my opinion, is that you have to go back to the hearings on Afghanistan during the Reagan years. And one of the comments that Ollie North made very, very clear is that Osama bin Laden is one of the most evil beings on the earth. Well, that was Al Qaeda. Osama bin Laden, you have to remember, we went in politically. Yeah, laugh at that. We didn't go politically. Here's the reasons. We went to Afghanistan. It wasn't to help those people become free of Russia. Remember, Russia was in Afghanistan for what, 20 some years, spent billions of rubles there, if not trillions of rubles, trying to take that over and settle and fight with, those jihadists that we ended up supporting, those that became Al Qaeda. Remember, Osama bin Laden was not Afghan. No, he's a Saudi from the House of Saud. And that is parts of what occurred there that also the Pew Report addresses at the end in relationship to the Taliban. But I want you to remember very clearly, because I have insight to this, and I'm not going to tell you where I got the insight from, but you need to clearly grasp that during the 70s and into the 80s, Afghanistan is forgotten to be the direct tie and link to 9/11. And we funded it all, okay? In that there were congressmen, but more so businessmen, miners. It all goes back to follow the money. 9/11, Afghanistan to this present day has been follow the money and lack of true constitutional political will and understanding of Washington's farewell address, to the extent that it was about the narcotics. Remember, those poppy fields look pretty, but guess where all of the heroin comes from? Okay, not all of it, but a good majority of heroin comes from. Yes, Afghanistan. And the other one that this is what Russia was there for. And this is what then we politically went there for under the guise of liberating the Afghans was none other than rare earth materials. So going to Afghanistan is like back in the 19th century, the late 1800s, early 1900s into the 20th century, going into Central and South America for the rubber plantations, for all the fruits and all of the other delights and minerals and all of the iron ore and all of the gold and all of the other materials in Central and South America that the global or American industrialist, who became the global industrialist, desired, lusted after. But wait a minute, Tom, our economy needs that material. Well, interestingly enough, we have sufficient materials here in America, but because, as you well know, those industrialists wanted that cheap labor force or, zero cost in labor, virtually speaking, that they went into all these other countries. Same being true in Afghanistan. Oh my, a place where they have warred for centuries, a place where they have a social system and a um, cultic view that is not understandable unless you've been there. And even then, it becomes very difficult because their whole ideas of Islam, especially from the perspective of the Taliban, is medieval at best. At best. So, you're looking at Muhammad himself willing to kill, maim, destroy, slavery, all of that, that is the core root of Muhammad and Mohammedism is the Taliban, Al Qaeda, and all of that. So, in trying to remember 9/11, you have to go back really not to Afghanistan, even to the present. You have to go to Afghanistan starting in the 60s, the 70s, and then into the 80s, and look at the transition of the lust for rare earth materials, rare earth minerals, especially as we went into the electronic age and what it would be needed for computers. And that's why China has it and wants it now, because in relationship to all of the yeah, it's a trip, all right, microchip development, all of the high technology development, we're doing it in third world countries. And China has become that great industrial provider of those materials for computers and everything technology. So, as I finish this segment in the last minute, remembering 9/11 isn't just the tragedy of the loss of life and the attack, it is the terrorism. And now, with the fall of Afghanistan to the Taliban and arming them, we we have just armed a terrorist opportunity once again for here in America. We have taken and allowed unvetted Afghanis to come in. I have no problem with those that fought with us. There are issues, they still need to be vetted. But, ladies and gentlemen, we have allowed now global terrorism to take and move to a new level. Sam Adams was against that. The Anti Federalists were. George Washington, as a Federalist, was. So come on back as we talk about more in the next segment of Sam Adams Returns. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this second segment of Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti federalists were more correct in so many different ways than people even realize. And this again is Tom Navulis, your host. I'm delighted that you are here with me again. One thing I want to make a quick mention of is for all of you who have been waiting to take and start contributing to what this program is doing. We're close. We're close to getting things set up as a separate entity instead of being under NCDCS. We're setting Sam Adams up as its own for-profit type of nonprofit, if you will. In Ohio, you can do that. In other words, I'm not going to be filing anything with the federal government, so all gifts will not be tax deductible because we're not going to play the games with the federal government. And we're finishing looking at the accountability aspect of what we need to do to put into uh, transparency as to what we're going to use your money for. And I'm very much closer to accomplishing that. And that'll be available to those who do determine that they want to participate in now funding what this program's doing, because we're doing as much as we can and nothing goes to me. Okay. So anything that comes in for this program goes strictly to sustaining the program and expanding the market reach. Because as I've mentioned to many of you before, mostly in the email, is that there's a Christian network that has approached me to bring this program onto that Christian network, and we want to make sure we're doing the right things with Liberty Works Radio Network, as well as having that opportunity to expand on Christian Network. So I think that's very interesting. So stand by, please. As I mentioned in the first segment, subscribe to the newsletter at the website samueladamsreturns.net. Those who are watching it on Rumble can see it over my shoulder, or if you're watching the video from the link on the website, you do that. Other than that, please subscribe to the newsletter at samueladamsreturns.net. So, one of the things that we did on the website in particular was that I was at a Tea Party meeting who had a nurse in talking about all the COVID insanity this past week. And I was given the opportunity 2 minutes to speak. And I had fun with that in some regards. But the point was is that I brought out for those, particularly in Ohio, is what I'm pressing people to clearly understand is our state's rights and the Ohio Constitution. So I made a commitment to two things that evening. One is that I would let folks know where they could purchase pocket federal constitutions. And on the website, there is for states' constitutions is a new tab that there has a box where people can find the links to three of my preferred pocket constitutions. It's not just a constitution, there's a whole lot more information in them. And so that's a place where you can go and purchase them if you don't know where to go. And then I made the commitment to start putting up, without question, the Ohio State Constitution and the Ohio Article 1 Bill of Rights, which every citizen in Ohio must understand to stop both the encroachment of the governor of Ohio, the bureaucracies in Ohio, not only at the state level, but all the way down to the county level. You must know your rights. And with that, I've begun, like I put in last week's program, those states that are surrounding Ohio, I actually have those states' state constitutions there as well. So that way, starting to build that list of state constitutions, that page is dedicated to state constitutions. Quick, easy place. You find your state, go click on it, boom, your Constitution will be in front of you, and you need to know your rights. You need to know your Bill of Rights. You need to know the context of which that is, because the federal government cannot encroach on you, nor can your governor, nor can any of the bureaucrats encroach on you when you know your rights and you hold them accountable all the way, as I said, in that 2 minutes down to the lesser magistrates. So, just in explaining all of that, I've exceeded my 2 minutes that I had on Tuesday night, but it's critical. So, go to samueladamsreturns.net. You'll see there a menu item in the menu for states' constitutions. Click on that, and boom, that's where we're beginning all of that resource material. Now, in understanding your state constitution, an outcome of the tragedy of 9/11, which actually started, as I said in the last segment, in the 70s in particular, and in the 80s, with us becoming involved with Osama bin Laden, with Al Qaeda, if you will, with the jihadists that have been there forever. And that meant we were also working with the Taliban at the time. Nobody wants to mention that. Ollie will tell you for sure. All of that was tied together. So, out of the event of 9/11, remember there were three tragedies that became major news: that of the Twin Towers, that of the Pentagon, and then the flight that crashed there in Pennsylvania. Out of that, the first thing that a Republican president did became the greater travesty to this very day, and that's the Patriot Act. Now, I have a link for you there in the Patriot Act, and like I said, there's a lot of documentation I could go through on all of that, but I don't want to spend the time there. But the Patriot Act, in summation, is the one that has facilitated and allowed all of the techno oligarchs, that of Silicon Valley and Mickey Soft monstrosity, that being Bill Gates and all of his techno oligarch cronies globally, to do what they've been doing, and allowing then the NSA to do what they've been doing. Now, there were sunset aspects within that Patriot Act, and that's in the documentation, but that was renewed in many different ways. And then it was definitely renewed, and many of the provisions were renewed, not only under Barack Obama in the Sunset Extension Act of 2011. So extended a lot of the provisions, if not the majority of the provisions that were supposed to sunset. But then, which is even more perverse, is that Donald Trump was manipulated and conned into this whole idea of the USA Freedom Act, that then just not only modified a lot of the provisions, but passed and modified them in 2019, but that act formally passed in 2015. Trump came in 2016, and then more of the provisions did not go through in 2020, but a lot of the damage was already done. So the provisions there, you have both links, and be honest with you, I use Wikipedia. We might as well use a leftist site to help quantify all of the reactions to what happened with 9/11 and the disaster of that. There's also a link to something, what to expect from the Patriot Act reauthorization. And this was an article written in 2020, looking at all the different surveillance, looking at what is NSA allowed to do. The Patriot Act increased the powers of government, and more is on the surveillance under the USA Patriot Act. Interesting article as well in talking about that. Also, have in here from the FBI itself on testimony that they gave back in 2005 in relationship to the Patriot Act, and so on we go. And then the secrecy and negligence, how Congress lost control of domestic surveillance. Very good article. You need to understand. Again, I give you a lot of reading. I'm not trying to, all you need to know is that Congress has lost control, that we have these techno oligarchs that are tied into the intelligence agencies that are feeding then all of the anti Americanism, the unconstitutional concepts that are there in education as well as in the various administrations, but mostly in the bureaucracies. And that is why I will always say that the bureaucracies are now running the country. The administration and Congress, they're fluff. They're fluff. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why it's absolutely critical before we see Hamilton's dream of a totally consolidated government coming to fruition, which it's almost there, obviating, destroying the states, we have to return to something else that I put up for you in the resources, that federalism was always the center of ratifying the Constitution. Federalism, meaning the sovereignty of the individual states, is premier. Sovereignty of those individual states is up to you. So that's why I'm putting up that link for you to understand your state constitution and for you to understand your Bill of Rights. Everything else is fluff. I know you're going, Tom, but we have so much to fight for. We have so much that we have to do. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't disagree with that. You have to pick your battles. I talked to someone the other night at that Tea Party meeting and was talking to me. They're thankfully an avid reader of not just the blog slash promo, but they pay attention to the program. And in the context of this program, the simplicity that I want to bring to you is to understand your rights and work through the doctrine of the lesser magistrate, what you're locally elected, to bring your local bureaucrats under control, and then to take and work to that state level. And talking about the local bureaucrats, yeah, I'm speaking this week on 9/11 in particular, uh, and we did not have the person available to talk about what happened in Geauga County and removing the health director or health commissioner in Geauga County. That's the process. When you understand your rights, when you're irritated enough to act on them, and when you have a body of people that go to a bureaucratic meeting that is under your tax funding, then you have a presence to affect outcome. And if they don't, then you have to go to the elected to have those bureaucratic councils and bodies removed. Those people that do not understand your constitutional rights are oath breakers. That's the bottom line. You see, Sam Adams, the Anti Federalist, those founding fathers understood an oath as something before the living and almighty God. And they knew that what they did in this world would be accountable to them in the next. There is a great judge of every man for all things, and that is the living God, Jesus Christ. So come on back, because Sam Adams knew all about that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this last segment of Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti federalists, they got it more than correct. They got it right in a predictive manner in so many different ways. And this is Tom the Vulture host once again, and I'm delighted that you're here with this third segment and you're hanging on with me as we continue to remember what was forgotten about 9/11 and Afghanistan, the unremembered about history. Just so much there, especially if you take and you go now with this woke culture, with all of this insanity and evil to destroy everything about Americanism, about our Constitution, about your liberties, and to enslave you in so many different ways that people are just falling into it. But it is Chi-Com flu forever. COVID forever. Now, Tom, what are you talking about? Well, I want to take you through just a couple of things real quick and delve into something a little bit deeper here in a moment. And I'm going to have to switch over to my phone because there's some things that I can't find necessarily on the computer because of a couple other security issues that I have going on with these particularly highly secured sites. But for instance, one of the areas that I want you to understand is a tie point on something that is a WBCSD. What the heck is WBCSD? World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Now, the important part of that is the collusion between them, the World Health Organization, and a lot of other things, a UN based, globally based. And a real portion of this is where I have a hard time with a lot of evangelicals that are in business and at the corporate level. You know what? I'm just going to chastise it one time and we'll move on. Bottom line is, you're not living your Christianity. Because if you're at the higher corporate level, if you're on a board of directors, if you are any senior officer in a company or a corporation, and you're not fighting all of the various things, and you're allowing the destruction of COVID, shots, all of these other particulars that are destroying the liberties of individuals, then you're not living your Christianity. Because, see, Christ said he'll make us free. And that's not just freedom from our sins, that means living freedom in a peaceable fashion and living it in the truest fashions of how we do justice in everything that we do, including labor. So when you have the likes of this World Business Council for Sustainable Development, who's uniquely positioned to work with member companies along and across value chains to deliver impactful business solutions to the most challenging of all cultural, personal, every type of event, then I got to tell you, you're part of the problem out there, evangelical Christian. Is that so? You got this company that, or this entity, World Business Council for Sustainable Development, that takes and it's working with 200 international companies. It's connected to 60 national and regional business councils and partners and organizations. Its intent is to help not just on sustainability, but on everything that I was mentioning earlier around all aspects of belief systems being tuned and twisted into this global thought process. And if you're a business leader, if you're a community leader, and you're allowing this to happen as a Christian, you better go look in the mirror on your knees and ask, what does your Christianity look like? Because if you're allowing this is evil, and guess what? You've probably been allowing it. Oh, gee, Tom, that's a mouthful. Yeah, it is. And if you're a pastor that's not taking this stuff on, and if you're giving into it, shame on you. Shame on you. You're a shameful coward. And there's a lot of them out there. All right, enough on that one. Go to the resources at samueladamsreturns.net and sign up for the newsletter, as well as look at today's program and see what's there in relationship to these resources. Some other couple things I wanted to mention from Afghanistan and all that. Interesting is that the idea of generals and how things went backwards over the last 40 to 50 years, because the military is supposed to have been, these generals are supposed to be something special. And as we talked with General Vallely on the program last month, is that they've been woke for a long time, and all we've been spewing out is a lot of officers out of the academies that are leftists. And when they get to that general officer level and they get involved in, the Council on Foreign Relations and all these other international bodies, they're lost, and therefore they've given bad advice, and on and on. We can make a whole program out of that one. But let's get it over to what we have here is the Chi-Com flu, the COVID forever. And in the COVID forever, the first article that I hope you can get to through the link, and I'm going to get there right now on the phone, is on this website called leohoman.com. It's in your references there. It's called Digital Documentation of COVID-19 Certificates, Vaccination Status. The actual article is called The Rising Biomedical Security State is Determined to Use COVID to Reduce Every Human Being to a QR Code. And you know, those QR codes are like those little block things with the squiggly lines all over them that you see on different products. Well, that's what the intention is here, to do that. So there is something that actually has come out of the World Health Organization. There's links to the documents both in the references and in the article. And the World Health Organization came out with this thing called Digital Documentation of COVID-19 Certificates, Vaccination Statuses, Technical Specifications, and Implementation Guidance. And this is for all of the techno-oligarchs. This is for Bill Gates, who's contributed to this. This is for the Google Schmoogles, Doogles, and all the other techno whack jobs, communist, globalist that are out there. So, okay, let's come to some standards by which we take and we ratchet in every human being on the planet so that we can keep all this data on them, have control mechanisms, and go back to what I talked about years ago when I was in high tech and I lectured at ISPCon and had a key presentation at ISPCon, The Matrix. The Matrix. This is drawing you into the matrix. Even in this documentation is to take and make and redefine humanity. We have that going on now. You got all the transgender. Anyway, I'm not going to go all of that. I want you to focus here, because what we have going on is in this article is that it will destroy your basic fundamental rights. So once again, I'm going to keep hammering this until all of you folks get it very clearly. Know your state constitution, Bill of Rights, and demand your sovereignty, not only as an individual within the context of your constitutional rights, God given rights, but also how you fight to hold accountable every bureaucrat in your state at every level, including then those elected in your school boards. They're oath breakers. They're violators of moral trust because when they take an oath to uphold the Constitution, they swear or affirm before Almighty God. So that means even those that claim to be evangelicals, being an oath breaker, are not living, as I mentioned in the last segment, up to what? Their values, their principles, and any biblical truth. So, where's their evangelicalism? Anyway, you can go through this whole paper. It is amazing. This is a guidance document for countries and implementing partners on the technical requirements for developing digital information systems for issuing standards based interoperable digital certificates for COVID 19 vaccination status and considerations for implementation of such systems for the purposes of continuity of care and proof of vaccination. It's a 99-page document, a lot to read when you want to go to sleep, or for those that read in the reading room, meaning the bathroom, probably a good place to read it. And that is to bring some humor to the program. All right. So I highly recommend that article and do that. So continuing on then in the last, oh my goodness, 3 minutes here of this program, I have a list of articles that are there from the Federalist. The Federalist, fabulous stuff. So here now we're looking at that Rand Paul is correct. So is Jim Jordan. Fauci is continuing to fund the Chinese gain of function research. Fauci is a criminal. He's a criminal to your liberties and rights. Understand it. Get a hold of your congressman and call them out. Tell them they need to not live the lie or promulgate the lie. Here's another article. I really enjoy this writer, Joy Pullman. She is really a smart young lady. The top reason I hate masks is they force me to live by lies. That's the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen. You're being lied to. And I know I'm talking to the choir here. And, choir, if you do not take all of this, put it into the context of your state's constitutional what? Your rights, your Bill of Rights, and you take that to your county health director, you take that to your city health director, you take that to your state legislature, then force the bureaucracies to give you your rights by virtue of your sovereignty as a citizen of your state, then you deserve what you get. So get your butts out of your seats, your feet's on the streets, folks. Understand your Bill of Rights. We're down to the last minute and a half already. Can you believe that? Oh, here we go. So here's the liar and fearmonger. Yes, corporate media is indoctrinating Americans with fears and lies. You see that all the time. Disconnect, if you have not, from all of that media. Folks, the battles, especially if you're an evangelical, don't be sitting up on the roof waiting for Jesus to come, because I'll tell you what, you're going to be held accountable for the fact that you did not live the fullness of your Christianity into every aspect of your life, meaning your work, not just your home and your church. Don't be just a churchgoer, but it means in your work, in your society, in your politics, and into the bureaucracies. Understand your constitution of your state and your Bill of Rights. Sam Adams said that. He wrote about it a number of times. I put that in the programs over and over again. You have to understand your rights, and you can never, ever give them up. You're responsible before the living God to maintain your rights that are given to you by Him. Come on back next week.